Um, Hello, everyone. This is a first video in a series that I'm going to talk about how to put astrophysical simulation, or really volume data, into Blender and visualize them. You can turn around the camera and have a look of how your simulation look like and make a kick-ass movie out of that. So in this first video, we're just going to talk about how to import the data into Blender, and we'll add some color, add some texture to the volume. So this tutorial will base off a GitHub repo that I have that have some example data here and a solution manual that you can follow. If you open the solution menu, it looks something like that. It's introduction to Blender. It tells you how to set up the workspace and import the volume data and so on and so forth. And also, of course, you can revert to this video and follow this step-by-step guide to reproduce some of the features in this video. All right, so let's get started. So once you open the Blender interface, you should see something like this. If this is the first time you open it, you may see some quick setup menu, but after that, you should get to this interface very quickly. The thing that you want to hit here, we want to choose General, and you see a white cubes and the light and the camera sitting around. And by hitting the mouse middle scroll wheel and drag it around, you should be able to navigate through the interface. Let me turn on some of the shortcut capture. All right, there we go. You should be able to see also like the command that I use to do certain thing in the interface, so it's easier to follow for you. So again, you can drag around the interface by clicking middle scroll wheel and drag if you have a mouse. And by hitting shift and the scroll wheel, you can pan the camera and look around as well. Now, my camera is slightly off-center. Imagine I do this, it's like, oh shit. It's very hard to see the object that I want to focus on. And what you want to do at that point is hit the key right next to your 1, usually, the accent grave. It'll pull up this menu, and you can click View Select. And it will zoom in to the object that you're focusing on. All right, so these are some basic navigation that we can use. Now let's go ahead and import some volume data that we want to visualize. But first off, let me just get rid of this cube here. So what you want to do when you want to delete something is hit X and confirm delete. And there's gone, there's the cube. And if you want to add something, you want to hit Shift A and go to, in this case, we want to import some volume data. So we're going to go to Volume and go to Import OpenVDB. Click on it, and I'm just going to find my VDB data. VDB is a format that Blender used to understand volume. We have a script on the repo to trying to convert a typical NumPy array into VDB. We'll have another tutorial talking about how to use OpenVDB to convert typical data formats such as HGF5 and NumPy array into VDB, but that's for another video. All right, so in this video, we just focus on how to look at volume data in Blender and try to shade them. So go ahead and import the data. You should see, if you use the volume data that I put in on the repo, you should see an empty cube popped up like this. All right, so like orange frame is very entertaining. And so the reason why this is just an empty volume cube, it's because the value stored in the cube is actually much smaller than 1. So we have to make it larger to make it visible. So go to the right here. This is your menus of like different tools that you can use. You can use it to translate your cube. We would do that in a moment. Or add modifier. For the moment, you don't. It could be a little bit confusing, but we'll go over them in the future. But the one that you want for this particular tutorial is go to Object Data Property, this green cloud here. Go to that tab, click on it. You should see a couple different grid values that you have. We have M gas, we have T, which is temperature, and Z, which is metallicity. And this is where you import your files. So, and what we want to do here is go to density and enter 1000. Now you see something, right? Now you see we have some value. So this is showing the M gas fuel multiplied by the density, which is 1000. Basically, we can use this as a control brightness, or density really means a constant multiplier to whatever field that you have here. So you can visualize it in this interface, right? So that's the first thing you can do. But what if I want some more color? So notice this interface that we're in now, this gray background is called the viewport. It's supposed to be a quick interface that you can navigate, organize your 3D objects, and have some quick modification, but not really for anything production scale. So if you want cooler visual effects, this is what we want to do. Can I get rid of this guy? Actually, I have no clue how to, whatever. So we want to give some color to these objects. How do we do that? Now, the thing that we want to do here is to add an area. So we want to customize our workspace a little bit. So I'll do that again. Oh my God. Let me join my area. So if you go to this boundary between the viewport and the menu on the right-hand side, there is a gap in between. And if you hover your mouse on it, you see the cursor turn into this two-head arrow thing. So you want to right-click on that, click vertical split, and drag a line into the middle somewhere here. And that will split your view into two, and you can use them independently. And now we want to go to the top left, click on that, and go to Shade Editor. We can hit Shift F3 as well, that works. Take away this guy. Now this is a menu this is an interface that we use to give whatever on the left colors. So the first thing you want to do is hit this new. So it creates some node here. Let me try to reorganize things a little bit. These nodes that basically trying to use the data you have here in these objects and trying to generate some material on this box, you know. So we control the brightness, contrast by material. We really mean how lights are emitted and absorbed on these volume data array. So we'll see how to use that in a moment. So now once you hit new and create this material, you should see these two nodes. There's the principal volume, there's the output. Now go to density and left click on it and hit 0. We don't need the density attributes in this case. And also take that density attributes off, take the temperature attributes off. And what we want to do is to add some emission strength to our data on the left. So what do you want to do to this node tree is to add some node that can take this input and plug them through a bunch of functions and make them an output. So what you want to do is go on the right, left click, make sure that you selected the right side interface, click Shift A, again, go to input, attribute, and you can pull up a node, attribute node like this. Okay. And then you can hit mgas here in the attribute node. So now what this attribute node does is it takes mgas and it can output whatever value it is. So try to pull this frag into emission strength and go on the left on the menu. So you don't see any changes on the left. That's because we're not in the viewport that capture the effects of this shading node yet. So you want to go to the left, go on the top right of the left here. There's the viewport shading mode that you can choose. So choose that. You see some, like first off, you see the gray filament disappear, but that's okay. That's because we have not normalized the values in our data yet. So what we want to do is like go back to the right, do Shift A, go to converter, go to math, and put a node here. Now we're adding some, like by doing this, we're taking the attribute, like the mgas array, uniformly add 0.5 on top of that, plug it into emission strength, then the volume output. So as expected, you see a lot of constant value over the volume. All right. So what we want to do is change add into multiply and change that to around 1000. You should see this very blurry kind of filament. It's not very so now you see something, and you know that hopefully trace whatever underlying value that you want to trace. But there's a problem. Like this look crap. It's very blurry. So the reason why is this is there's two render engine in Blender. So what you want to do is go to the right menu, choose this camera thing, and we want to choose another render engine other than Eevee. Eevee is kind of like the faster render engine that I think use rasterizing, but not really ray tracing. So you want to choose the other one called Cycles. And now it would takes up a little bit more time, but you can see that as soon as I choose Cycles, it actually render quite well. It's significantly less blurry comparing to the Eevee render. I mean, it's still blurry because the data that we're using is actually very small, and it has some fundamental resolution issue. But that's fine. That's not the fault of Blender. It's just our simulation is too expensive to store on a computer like this. Or I mean, for a tutorial. All right. So, and I have a GPU, so I'm going to go ahead and use the GPU. We're going to go over these settings. This is just meant to be like a hands-on following guide that you can do this step by step. But there's a lot of aspect of our Blender that I'll gloss over. All right. So now we have, import the MGAS field into the Blender and trying to visualize that. And by tuning this multiply knob, like for example, I want to change it to 100, you can tune the brightness of this field. But what if I want to visualize, let's say I want to focus more on the cluster, or I want to focus more on the filament, what should I do? So the usual control here that we want to do is to, through a power, multiplying, not really multiplying, but take the view value in the left and raise them to some power so that we increase the contrast. So to do this, in this current state, you can go to multiply here, click Shift D to duplicate this node. You have a duplicate of this node, and you drag this node, put it on top of this link. It will automatically link the input of this node and output input of that node into this node. All right? So see, and then you can click left to release the node onto that connection. So now we have the attribute multiply, like MGAS multiply by 100, and then multiply by 100 to the volume and to the output. All right? So that's what we have. But we want to change this multiply node into a power node. So now again, you don't see anything because when you have small numbers here multiplied, and these numbers that we have in MGAS array is actually smaller than 1 because we normalize them. If you raise that to a power of 100, of course, you're going to get really small numbers. So let's change this to something. Let's change it to 1 and see how it goes first. So you get back what you got when you hit in the multiply mode, right? Now let's try to change this. Actually, let me change multiply to 1000 again so we can see this easier. But now let's change power to 2. You should see I really only highlight the middle over density in this field because, now we have increased the contrast. On the other hand, you can lower the contrast, and now it becomes almost uniform with some filaments in it. All right, so you can play around with this knob and see what you like. 0.2 is fine for me. And yeah, that's how you put one simulation into Blender. And you can see as I drag around the viewport, now it becomes pixelized at the first, but then it will smoothen out. That's because the render engine is doing whatever path tracing here. And there's one more topic in this tutorial is to add colors in the Blender volume we have here. So the tricks are simple and almost the same as how we do the MGAS to give the volume a brightness. But this time we're just going to change the emission color with an help and additional. So what you can do, instead of going through the whole Shift A thing to set up these 3 nodes, you can just duplicate again. So you want to click your left mouse key, drag a box and select all these attribute, power, and multiply. You have 3 of them. Hit Shift D to duplicate them. Okay. And now what we can do is change MGAS into T, which is supposed to be the temperature field. And we can take the value and plug it into emission color. All right, and you see it get brightened up by temperature. Because we are basically taking the temperature, manipulating through the power, rise it to some power and multiply it, and give the color in, give that as a value of the color. Originally, I think the color, it's actually saturated, so I don't actually know why it get brighter. But anyway, you see the point. This is choosing a color, but this is not very entertaining in the sense that everything is white. So instead of plugging in as an additional brightness, we want to have some color map. And to do this, what you want to do is hit Shift A, go to Converter, go to Color Ramp, and plug it here in this connection. Okay. Now what this does is take these value, plug it into this node, take it as an input of this node, and map those number from black to white. So presumably, whatever range you are in these nodes, and map it into this. But sometimes it gets saturated all the way to right, so you need to tune the range of these things, either from 0 to 1 or 0 to 255. I don't actually know which way it goes, but usually I just tune them until it falls in whatever reasonable range that I have. All right, so now we take these numbers from temperature and map it onto this bar. Let's go ahead and change the colors here a little bit. So click on one of these cursor, click on them. You see it is saying, like here, it's describing which cursor you're on. So we're on the first one, so here we count from 0. And you can change the color here. Let's choose some less saturated orange. Now you can see everything turns into orange, uniformly. That means all of your value here actually goes to the right end, which means our values are too big. So let's change this to 1. Now, like you see a lot of things disappear, which means some of these values that are small get mapped to the black. So that's good. We have a range of colors that we can choose from. So we can change the black into, again, a less saturated color, something like a purple-ish thing. That's usually how people have. Look at that purple. Oh, this actually looks fairly good. Like so purple, blue kind of color. So now we give a color to our volume. Right? We have like some more brownish, reddish. Can I change it to more red actually? Not a very big difference, but it's slightly better. So it's very purplish and all that. You can play around, of course, you can play around with this slider bar, and you can add more color stop in the between to make it more dramatic. For example, I can make this darker. Yeah, that's better. Okay. So you can play around with the color ramps here to get the desired color that you want, and the control here is really to get it into the right range, and you want to mostly control whatever contrast or colors here through the color ramp. All right. So there's one more thing that we want to do before I end this tutorial. Is now it's kind of hard to see this this volume, these large scale structure in this viewport because the background is gray. So what you want to do is go to the right, go to this Earth-like World Properties tab, click on it, and choose the background color to be completely black. In this tutorial, we've tried, putting the volume into Blender and also give it some color. And in the next tutorial, we'll go over how to place your camera and maybe animate your camera a little bit and, render a final video out of this volume data that we just put into Blender. All right, peace.